There was a time when the sky wasn't a limit, it was a stage, and on that stage, one star shone brighter than all the others. Their blue globe logo was a promise of adventure and class. Their massive Boeing 747s were flying palaces, carrying the jets set to faraway lands. They were Pan-American World Airways, or Pan, and they were America's airline, a symbol of post-war power and glamour. But then, that future never arrived. The flying palace fell, and the once proud icon was left as a memory, a whisper in history. This is the story of how an empire of the sky fell to ashes. Founded in 1927 by the ambitious visionary Juan Trippe, Pan Am's vision was to connect the world. Under his leadership, Pan Am became a pioneer. They were the first to fly the Pacific and the first to offer round-the-world flights. Most importantly, they were the launch customer for the Boeing 747, the jumbo jet that reshaped global travel. In the 60s and 70s, flying Pan Am was an event. Its upper deck lounge and spiral staircase were legendary. Their flight attendants were fashion icons. The in-flight service was mythical. They didn't just sell tickets, they sold a dream. Their Worldport terminal at JFK was an architectural marvel, a gateway to a glamorous world. But this extraordinary success hid a fatal flaw that was cracking the fuselage. Pan Am's Achilles heel was a staggering fact. For most of its history, it was forbidden from flying domestic US routes. They were an international giant with no domestic network to feed their hubs. Then, two earthquakes shook their foundation. First, the 1973 oil crisis sent fuel costs soaring. Their massive 747 fleet went from being an asset to a crushing financial burden. Second, and more importantly, was the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978. Suddenly, the market was open. Domestic airlines like American and United could now compete on Pan Am's lucrative international routes with a massive advantage. Pan Am was trapped, flying half-empty jumbo jets while its new competitors flew smaller, more efficient planes. In a desperate bid for the domestic network it craved, Pan Am made a disastrous decision in 1980. They bought National Airlines on paper. It made sense in reality. It was a catastrophe. The two companies had clashing cultures and incompatible fleets, and the deal left Pan Am with a mountain of debt. Instead of solving the problem, the merger only made it worse. Crippled by debt and fierce competition, Pan Am began selling its most precious assets just to survive. In 1985, in an unthinkable move, they sold their entire Pacific network, the jewel in Juan Trippe's crown. To rival United, the empire began to shrink. The loss of their most profitable routes was a blow from which they would never truly recover. But the fatal blow to Pan Am's heart came not from a boardroom, but from the sky. As a symbol of America, they became a prime target for terrorists. A series of hijackings and bombings throughout the 70s and 80s damaged their reputation for safety. And then, on December 21st, 1988, the ultimate tragedy struck. Pan Am Flight 103, en route from London to New York, exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, due to a terrorist bomb, killing all 259 people on board and 11 on the ground. The Lockerbie bombing was a wound that never healed. It was a scar on the soul of the airline. It shattered public trust. People became afraid to fly on a plane with the blue globe logo. Pan Am was now seen as unsafe, a moving target. The glamour was gone, replaced by fear. The brand, once their greatest asset, had become their greatest liability. The death knell sounded in 1990 with the first Gulf War. fuel costs soared again, and the fear of terrorism brought international travel to a standstill. For a fragile airline completely dependent on international flights, this was the final blow. In January 1991, with losses mounting, Pan Am filed for bankruptcy. For nearly a year, they tried to fly on, a ghost of their former self, selling off what was left. They sold their precious European routes, and even their iconic Pan Am shuttle, but it was not enough. The airline was hemorrhaging cash faster than it could sell its assets. The end was near. On December 4th, 1991, the final Pan Am flight, Flight 436 from Barbados, landed in Miami. As the plane taxied to the gate, a chapter of aviation history was closing forever. As the engines spooled down for the last time, the pilot said over the intercom, "We bid the world good night, the empire had fallen." So what really killed Pan Am? It was a perfect storm of arrogance, disastrous strategic mistakes, and the cruel misfortune of being a victim of geopolitical events. The world changed, but Pan Am, trapped by its own history and structure, could not change with it. The story of Pan Am is more than a business failure. It's the end of an era, the end of the romantic jet age of travel. Their legacy is a dual story. It's a memory of a bygone era of glamour and optimism in the skies. But it's also a chilling warning of how quickly a giant can fall, of how a beloved brand can be destroyed. They were a company perfectly designed for a world that, by 1991, no longer existed. Pan Am flew too high, too close to the sun, and in the end, its wings melted away, leaving a void in the sky that could never be filled. What are your memories of Pan Am, or the golden age of travel? Let us know in the comments. If this story of a fallen icon resonated with you, help us decode more giants by hitting the like button. And subscribe to Decoding the Giants for more deep dives into the brands that shaped our world. Their legacy is written in the contrails of history, a beautiful but cautionary tale. The fall was as spectacular as the ascent.